Sure. That sounds about right there, Trammell.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining ARC's weekly Fireside Chat. I want to welcome you all. We have an incredible panel this week, a number of amazing human beings that will literally captivate your ability to understand what does it mean to see hope and redemption and believing in second chances. Before we get into our discussion, I'd first like to give instructions, as I always do. At the bottom of your screen, if you're on a computer, you'll see several icons. Two icons say Q&A and one says chat. If you'd like to communicate directly with our panelists, you can put questions in either the chat or Q&A. And as we're able to, or as time permits, we will definitely answer those questions and want to welcome you in asking those questions so that you can better understand the topic that we're discussing, specifically surviving life without the possibility of parole and literally ending it. It's a sentence that we should not have in our state or in our country today. And we'll be talking about the inhumanity of it, if you can just imagine what that means. We'll also be talking about the Advanced Leadership Skills Program, training survivors of LWOP, life without the possibility of parole, and sentencing advocacy. Today's chat, I could not wait to have some of these incredible human beings on. We'll be speaking to Elizabeth Calvin, Senior Advocate at Human Rights Watch, William Billy Hoffman. William prefers to be called Billy, so I'll be calling him Billy, Associate Advocate at Human Rights Watch, Ruben Ruiz, Associate Advocate at Human Rights Watch. And let's get directly into it. Elizabeth, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing at Human Rights Watch?
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Calvin, Senior Advocate in the Children's Rights Division at Human Rights Watch, and I work on a variety of issues, mostly grounded in justice reform for youth and young adults, and we tend to work, on the rights of population up to about age 26. So that's my focus, and kind of generally, what we're talking about here today is what we refer to as our LWOP project, the Life Without Parole project. And do you want me to kind of launch into that, Sam, or do you want to ask questions, whatever you...
I'm here to be of service and to present this. I want people to know the work that's being done that many don't know about and how important it is.
Well, so let me just talk about the LWOP project and kind of the basis for it, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues to talk about maybe like what life without parole really means and the work that they're doing on this. I mean, Human Rights Watch has worked since 2004, 2003 on various ways across this country, across the United States, to try to end the use of the sentence life without the possibility of parole. And we have worked in coalition with many on this, including ARC. We led the campaign to end the use of life without parole sentences in California for people under the age of 18. And we've worked with ARC and many others on a lot of changes to law. And I think maybe the thing that is perhaps the most important lesson in our successes has been that the way to change hearts and minds and the way to craft a campaign that is strategic and clear is to do it with the leadership of people who have had direct experience of whatever it is that we're working on. And since we've been able to pass laws to allow people to get out, even though they had life without parole as a juvenile. And since the current governor and our previous governor, Governor Brown, have been commuting the sentences of people, some people who have life without parole. This state is in a kind of unique situation in that where we have more than 100 people who once were sentenced to die in prison and are now out. So at its heart, the LWOP project is really focused on building up the leadership capacity of those individuals, so that we really kind of on a national basis can bolster the likelihood that we can get rid of this sentence.
That is simply amazing. And so directly to what you said, being able to bolster up the leadership of people that have survived and lived through being sentenced to die in prison literally goes right into Billy. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing at Human Rights Watch?
Yeah, my name's Billy, obviously, and I'm working here with Ruben and Miss Calvin. I came home on January 21st, and so it's been quite an experience to step into this role and just be able to be a part of something that really played a significant role in my life and me coming home. And although I was impacted by the youth offender when I went to board, but I came home through a commutation. But the work that Miss Calvin and ARC and the other partners did to change hearts and minds really paved the way for me to come home. And so just being able to be a part of this work and continue that effort for those still left inside is just really incredible. And it's just an honor to be here and be a part of it, to be reaching out, connecting to all the LWOPs. Ruben and I have did some investigative work to try to locate and track down virtually every former LWOP that's been released, and just offer them that connection. If you want to be a part of this, you're welcome. We want you to be a part of this, whether it's the project or just the community. But you have a family here of support, so it's just an honor to be here and to be a part of that.
It's an honor to have you, brother. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being an example of why LWOP shouldn't exist. And my brother from another mother, the last time we actually saw each other physically, we were on a river rafting trip sometime. It was before COVID. By the way, Ruben threw me in the water, just so you know. I could not throw Scott in the water. We were trying to, but had an amazing time on our river rafting trip. Ruben, welcome to the show. And could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work you're doing at Human Rights Watch?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Ruben Ruiz, and I work with Billy Hoffman and Elizabeth Calvin at Human Rights Watch. Before I get in a little bit about my story, I want to say thank you to Sam and everybody that allowed us to participate in this fireside chat. There's a lot of things that we would like to share. I want to focus on, a little bit about my experience of what it, having that sentence of life without, and then also maybe talk a little bit about some of the things we're working on right now. I don't know how much time I have, Sam, but go ahead and cut me off if I'm, getting a little bit long-winded. For me, I went in as a youth. I was 17 years old when I committed my life offense. When I received a sentence of life without parole, I didn't immediately realize the gravity of it and what it actually meant. And as soon as I entered prison, it crystallized, and I immediately realized that was a death sentence, by incarceration, that I was going to spend the rest of my life, no matter how long I was able to survive in prison, until I died. So with that over my head, I continued to live a destructive life, and the mentality that I had was, I didn't have no hope, so I abandoned it, and I looked at it in a lot of ways as a weakness. To have hope, it was a feeling that you carried with you, but in reality, there was no hope of ever getting out. So for me, I just continued down a destructive path, and I ultimately ended up in solitary confinement, where I spent over 11 years. But while I was in solitary confinement, I began to, look at myself in the mirror and educate myself in a way that I had never done before. I began to read and became aware of things that, you know, as a young youth, you thought you knew what you knew, but you didn't really know anything. So the world started opening up to me through books, and I fell in love with, you know, reading and learning. You know, that ultimately started to change the way that I thought about, you know, myself and life, and, you know, the damage and destruction that I caused in so many people's lives. And it was through that I began to make changes in my thinking and ultimately my behavior. And I was fortunate enough to receive a letter from Elizabeth Calvin and Human Rights Watch, letting me know that they were working on, you know, legislation to try to give youth a second chance, you know, people who had life without parole. And so it was with that, you know, I mean, it was a process for her and a lot of the people that she was working with that were spearheading this legislation, you know. So it gave us a glimmer of hope, but yet, you know, you had to keep it in check and not, you know, build too much, because for me, you know, the experience of, you know, being, you know, hopeful always ended up in a way that I didn't want to have it anymore. So with that said, ultimately, I was granted a resentencing hearing through the legislation that they helped pass. I went to the parole board, which is a vigorous process. They don't just let you out, you know, because you get a resentencing and get a second chance, you know, at freedom. You have to go through a vigorous process and really demonstrate your rehabilitation and show that, you know, you've made gigantic changes in your life. It's not, you know, whether you've, you know, made small changes, you have to really demonstrate, you know, that you changed your life. And for the board, they ask you everything from, you know, the time when you're a young boy until the present moment you're sitting in that boardroom, and they dissect every aspect of your life. So, you know, they really do a thorough job. And ultimately, I was granted the opportunity of parole and finally released. I began working with Elizabeth and Heidi Romo, going back into prisons for that first year. And it was a great experience because there was, you know, we went in there to do workshops for people that had life without parole, juveniles that had life without parole. And for them to see somebody that actually was released on that sentence, it was different. And I seen it in the way that they expressed, you know, their hope. And
Ruben.
Hey, go ahead.
Right there. So just so you know, and so our audience knows, one, both you and Billy and the other people that will be on the show a little later today, you're inspirational in a number of different aspects. One, people's families that have loved ones that are sentenced to life without the possibility of parole are watching this. They're in the chat saying that you're inspirational, both of you. And then this is recorded, and so it will be sent inside for others to see that they know there's an opportunity. And when you say made that big, gigantic change and decided to do something different with your life, even though there was nothing guaranteed to you, I just want y'all to know that and know that that's a part of it, that hope that I can get out, that I can be where Billy's at, I can be where Ruben's at is hugely important. Also, at this time, want to just take a moment to shout out Families United to End LWOP, CCWP, Drop LWOP, all of the organizations and coalitions that have worked together to end this sentence. If I didn't shout you out, I humbly apologize, but I want to make it clear that this has not been one organization that has worked on this. This has been a huge collaboration, and the power of advocacy is the unity that we have together. If we're united, there are no laws that we can't change to make more equitable for our children and for the people that are inside these systems. With that said, I want to ask Elizabeth to tell us, like, what prompted the creation of this leadership program for former life without, and I'll use the term LWOPs. What prompted this to be able to actually help people like Billy and Ruben and others to, like, literally be prepared to step into that advocacy role? And just so y'all know, I'm excited for the next lead cycle when COVID is over with, and we'll be up together advocating for laws change, shoulder to shoulder, brothers and sisters and everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start by building on what you just said about, shout out to a number of other organizations that are passionately working on this issue here in California. And there are organizations across the country, most of them also, community-based, grassroots-based people who are doing everything they can to bring this issue up and make it and change hearts and minds so that we can actually change laws. And so I would say at its heart, this project is intended to lay some foundation stones to help the work to end life without parole be all the stronger. So that's the heart of it, and maybe the way to put it would be is the soul is the idea that at every turn, whether it's leadership in a campaign, whether it's a messaging, whether it's speaking to legislators, we need people who have experienced this sentence to be at the forefront. And so that's really what this project is about. And we have 4 prongs that we're working on that work to those ends of, helping to move this issue forward, helping to lay the foundation stones to change hearts and minds. One is, concretely enhancing the leadership skills. And so as you know, we, along with USC and the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, we put on the first advanced leadership skills program this summer and had 33 former LWOPs graduate from that pretty rigorous course. And the intent behind that is, one, to build leadership for the effort to end LWOP, but also just to build the leadership capacity of every single former LWOP out there, with the idea of whether they're a leader because they're a pastor in a church, or they're working in a business, or they're working on, foster care issues, whatever they're working on, their leadership speaks to the reason that life without parole is so wrong. We hope to be very soon doing that program inside with people who are currently serving life without parole. The second thing that I'll mention is that we're about to launch the application process for a leadership council. So we intend to start a council that would be made up of former LWOPs. It'll be nationally focused and we'll be there to be a presence, be the face of why LWOP is wrong, to support groups that are working on this, and to be basically messengers and leaders on the issue of ending LWOP. And I'll just mention briefly the 2 other prongs. One is to be a part of setting in motion messaging and communications on this. We're going to start with a website with basic information about it. Again, also with some stories of people who've survived LWOP, with the purpose of this being, again, to support efforts that are happening around ending LWOP. And then the final thing is the kind of a long-term collection of information about people who've survived the sentence. So that's the project in a nutshell. I don't know if that answered your question, Sam.
It absolutely did. And I want to come back to you in a moment, but first, and this is kind of the story of the power of advocacy, of experience. So I'll come back to you in just a moment, but first, I want to ask both Billy and Ruben, why is it important for those that have survived LWOP to lead an advocacy around ending LWOP? Billy first and then Ruben, why is it important for those who've survived LWOP to lead in advocacy efforts?
We frequently say they're the experts. They know what it is to have been there. They know what it is to have lived through it with that cloud of like death over you every day and hopelessness. But they're also the best representatives of change and the redemptive capability of the individual. And so having a former LWOP speak and represent, and we've done it many times where they've spoken in front of people, and the people are just amazed that this person was sentenced to die in prison, and it just it communicates so much. Just being able to have that connection, that contact, see the person, the individual, the transformation, and then hear their experience, hear what it was to be there and live through it. So I think that's what makes it so powerful.
Thank you, Billy. And Ruben, why is it important for people that have survived LWOP to lead in advocacy efforts of ending LWOP?
The way Billy said it, I can't really say it any better. So I echo what he said, but I'll add that, you know, I've learned since I've been out and working with Elizabeth Calvin and others that when she talks about us in front of people versus me talking about my own story in front of people, that's not something that, you know, crosses over unnoticed. When somebody hears you sharing about yourself, details about your past, going through the experiences that you went through, in a raw way or in an authentic way, or however you might want to describe it, it has an effect, powerful effect. And it's when they see you actually speaking, they see that how can this person have ever been, they don't recognize or they can't imagine the person speaking having done and committed a horrible crime. So that in itself, while also sharing that process of your change, you know, it's real. It's real, and it's not the same as if, say, Heidi or anybody else is talking about me and I'm not there, talking about Billy and he's not there. There's not that same connection. So I think that in itself is powerful.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. We're about to go into our second panel, but I want to ask a question, Elizabeth, and I already know this story as concisely as possible. When did you learn of the power of the experience of advocacy? And I'm speaking specifically to Senate Bill 9.
Yeah, I mean, as many people know, it took 7 years for us to pass a law in California that limited the effect of life without parole for people under age 18. And at that time, there was a parole rate that was less than 5%. So there actually were not that many former lifers wandering around in California. And I think the first really clear, powerful message that I realized was when I asked Aquila Shirelles to speak. And he's not a former lifer. He is, in fact, the father of someone who was murdered by a 17-year-old. And he came and testified, and it completely, just what Ruben and Billy just described, it completely changed what was happening in that hearing room. After that, we did have a former lifer who was able to testify, who got out. He was one of the few that were getting out. He obviously didn't have LWOP, but he could have gotten LWOP. And his name's James Trammell. And he had murdered someone at age 17, but came from a pretty wealthy family and had good counsel and was able to get a sentence that had parole. And he became an Episcopal priest while he was in prison, so that helped. But he came out and testified. It was just, the room could not have been quieter as he talked about his life and his transformation. And then it just snowballed from there as more and more people were able to get out. Tung Nguyen was another person who got out in 2011, and he was able to, 3 days after he got out, called me up and said, "What can I do to help?" So it's, there's just no question that the direct voices, not somebody else telling their story, the direct voices of people who've experienced it is critical.
Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. We're at time, but I'd like for each of you to take a minute, and share your closing thoughts with the audience before we go to panel 2. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for the work that you're doing. I am inspired by you, just so you know. Like literally right now, I'm like, I get up and run 20 miles right now. So Billy, last thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, just thank you for the opportunity, and I just thinking of those inside, and I saw a question about what they can do, and I would just say to those inside, prepare yourselves, because we're working to get that opportunity. Ms. Calvin and others worked to give me the opportunity, and I was ready when it came. And so I just encourage them to stay focused, get ready. People are fighting, and the opportunity will come, and just be prepared when it does.
Thank you, Billy. Ruben, take a minute. Last thoughts for our audience.
Again, as Billy said, you know, we're going to continue to work and do everything that we can do on our side. And we want, you know, our brothers and sisters who are inside and still, you know, holding on to that hope to continue to do what you're doing and make those positive steps, because you never know when that time's going to come, and it could come sooner. It might come, you know, a little bit later, but we're not going to give up until we get there.
Thank you, Ruben. Appreciate you, brother. Looking forward to our next river rafting trip too.
For sure.
Elizabeth, last thoughts for our audience.
Yeah, you know, I would just say there are more than 50,000 people in the United States who are serving the sentence of life without parole. It is inhumane. It's inhumane to tell someone that you don't deserve even the chance to prove who you become. And so I think we all just need to like focus on that fact and move forward. And I would just say also that I can't tell you how many times people said to me that it would be impossible to end life without parole for juveniles. Over and over again. Our allies often would say it. This is a Don Quixote effort, and it's not going to happen. And I think we just have to look at each other and say, this is worth it. And it's worth however long it takes to do it. And these are individuals who are valuable, brimming with potential, and the potential to come home and help our communities be better. So that's my last word. And thank you so much, Sam, for inviting us here.
Well, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Billy, for the amazing work that you're doing. I adore you and I appreciate you. Let's continue to inspire and change the world. I believe collectively there's nothing that we can't change. And I'm here to serve with you and look forward to our next endeavors together. Thank you. And now I'm going to welcome our next panel. I want to welcome Heidi Romo, Director of USC Post-Conviction Justice Project and Clinical Professor at Law USC Gold School. One of my favorite universities, by the way, go Trojans. Alan Burnett, returning citizen, Cal State LA student. Kelly Savage, drop LWOP coordinator at California Coalition for Women Prisoners, CCWP. And Mike Caputo, ARC member. I want to welcome these individuals to our panel. This is the second half of our Ending LWOP panel. So Heidi, could you introduce yourself and briefly give us an overview of the USC PCJP project?
Sure, thanks, Sam. Thanks for the opportunity. PCJP is a clinical program that's been around at USC for over 40 years. For more than 20 years, law professors and students have represented life-term people in the California prison system through the parole process. When I started with the project in 2008, I immediately met Elizabeth Calvin and brought juvenile life without parole into the body of work that we were doing. Students for many years advocated to change those laws, represented people on resentencings and at parole hearings and on commutations. As of this week, we have had 16 life without parole clients released, and we have one other waiting on the governor to review his grant. In fact, this week, yesterday, just to celebrate a little in times that aren't always positive, we had one of our LWOP clients come home yesterday, and we had one be granted parole on Tuesday. So, but it's those are the success stories, and Ruben and Billy are the success stories. But in doing the workshops around the state with Elizabeth and Human Rights Watch, and meeting all of the people still serving JLWOP and meeting other LWOPs, I think what everyone needs to understand is that some people rise above this sentence and in extraordinary ways are able to survive and thrive and create opportunities to come home. But as you said, Sam, the sentence is, and as Elizabeth said, it's inhumane, it's crushing, and many people suffer in darkness with that sentence. So I'm really excited to USC as part of this project to finally end LWOP in California once and for all, and to bring hope to everyone who's been suffering under the hopelessness of that sentence.
Thank you, Heidi. I know your work well. Many don't. I'm going to come back to you to talk about a case that you worked on that changed the landscape of life prisoners. But first, definitely want to, Kelly, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. It is so important to talk about this topic. I work for California Coalition for Women Prisoners. Sorry, my name is Kelly Savage Rodriguez. I have been absolutely blessed to be out for 2 years after serving life without the possibility of parole. There is absolutely no way to survive this process inside without advocates like ARC, Human Rights Watch, Heidi herself in campaigning that's been done, all of the work from Fuel and CCWP. So I definitely appreciate all the people that have stepped up to uplift the hugest challenge that CDCR faces is individuals who have no hope. And you've all worked together to give us some hope for the future. And I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for joining us. Mike, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you've been up to.
Hi, I'm Mike Caputo. I'm an intern at ARC, and just been doing answering letters from prisoners and trying to help them find a way home by changing their behaviors and themselves, and just telling them my story, how I got out. I did 35 and a half years under life without, and Jerry Brown gave me a commutation, and I got myself found suitable like 4 months later. It's been a great blessing. A friend of mine sent me over to ARC, and I fell in love with the place. It's like a big family, and I miss all these great people, and I love the LWOP, the advanced leadership training, because it helped me to learn more about myself and things that I want to help accomplish, because nobody should do this sentence.
Thank you, brother. Hey, I feel you. Hey, Mike, thank you. And I want y'all to know, so I've watched Mike since he's come home, and when it came to work and things to do, even when we were registering people to vote, Mike was there. Frontline, hand sanitizer, mask, making sure the youngsters had a place when we were out in Compton doing this. And so I want to just tell you thank you and welcome home, brother. Alan is trying to log in. We'll come back to Alan once he's completely logged back in. We're trying to get his video up. Alan, can you hear us? Okay, we'll come back to Alan as soon as he jumps in. Alan, I've known him for some time. Paroled a short time ago, was also commuted, but I want Alan to be able to share his own story. Heidi, I want to ask you, can you tell the audience more about the Post-Conviction Justice Project, and how does ending LWOP fit into your project?
Our project turned to representing California inmates in life for hearings more than 20 years ago. And when I joined, no one was going home. No one was going home. I would meet the most extraordinary people with perfect rehabilitation for many, many, many years, and we couldn't get them home. We challenged that process, as you know, in a case that ultimately made it up to the California Supreme Court, and for one of our long-term clients, and we won in the California Supreme Court, and
Please tell us the name of
cracked
that
open the
case.
door.
In your life, or you know that case.
You know it, because that's the first thing you said to me when I met you. In Ray Lawrence, Sandra Davis Lawrence,
yes.
Sandra Lawrence, who's doing great, and courts started taking a look at the process. I mean, we had a process where everyone had life without parole, right? I was new to the California system, criminal system, and I said, well, you've got 15 to life, you got 25 to life, you got 7 to life. No one goes home. It's all LWOP, but that's not the way our laws are set up to work. Some people, well, no one should have LWOP, but some people have LWOP and people with lesser sentence. So that was the starting point. I think it really was the starting point, and we started sending lifers home, and they do great, and the recidivism rate is under 1%. And then we had the partnership. Jerry Brown came in and thought about parole differently than his predecessors had, and he reformed the board, and Governor Newsom's continuing that, and an extension of that is commutations or resentencings and commutations for people who have life without parole, which is essentially what everyone had, I think, before Lawrence and Jerry Brown improved the process.
So thank you. And in fact, I remember reading cases when I was inside that said, even basically, prisoners in California that were sentenced to life with the possibility of parole were in fact de facto life without possibility of parole, because the board was not releasing anyone. And if you happen to be one of those rare persons that actually got found suitable, the governors in the past would take those dates. I want to welcome Alan on. Glad you were able to join, Alan. So good to see you, brother. Last time I saw you were behind the wall. I mean, we've seen each other on the Zoom or two, but the last time I actually physically saw you were in Lancaster prison. Wanted to give you an opportunity. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to since you came home.
First of all, let me apologize. If you're going to ask me anytime during this thing about what's been one of the challenges since I've been out, it's the technology. So we'll get that out the way right now.
Okay.
But, yeah, man. So I've been home for about 4 months now. I served 28 years and 8 months on the LWOP sentence. September 2019, my sentence was commuted. I went to the board and I was released. Right now, I'm a student at Cal State Los Angeles, working on my bachelor's degree, just enrolled in the master's program for next semester in organizational communications. I'm a part of Project Rebound over at Cal State LA, and I'm doing some consulting for Parole Justice Works. So I'm just happy, man. I'm happy to be free.
Incredible. Hey, welcome home, brother.
Thank you.
Glad you could join us. Technology is something that we're all learning. Don't worry about it. Like Zoom has been something that's been a challenge for many.
Yeah.
But I know you're a quick learner and you'll get it. Want to ask you and our other panelists, LWOP is known as the other death sentence and comes with an incredible amount of hopelessness. How did you maintain hope while serving a sentence, and how did you get free? Let's go first to Kelly, if you don't mind sharing.
So for me, it was about knowing that the people around me were going to get out, and they were going to be my loved ones' neighbors. And so what was I going to do to make it better right where I was? So many people kept saying, if anybody's getting out, it's going to be you, the work you're doing, you're in the courts, it's going to happen. And I kept saying, today I'm here, and what am I going to do to make it better here? And I think that's what helped me, seeing other people, knowing other people were getting opportunities, and it was the work we were doing inside, like so many other LWOPs do. We're the ones that are running the groups and trying to motivate and create more change, because we know these people are going out and they're going to have opportunities to interact with our loved ones. And so we want to do the best that we can to uplift that. Did we think someday? Oh, we always heard the someday things are going to change and things are going to get better. But most of us really don't believe that. You know, we know that we're here, and what are we going to do today to make it better and succeed in a way that maybe we weren't before incarceration? Some of us didn't even know how to succeed before incarceration. You know, early age, you know, childhood trauma, so many factors came into play. And so having that opportunity to uplift others, and I help multiple people prepare for board and go through the process. So by the time I had an opportunity to just have the interview, it was not easier, because the biggest question is, why do you deserve this? And everyone has the ability to change and grow. And so, and most individuals are constantly trying to do that while they're inside. You see people on a daily basis fighting to get into programs to do better. And so that's what kind of gave me that hope, was being able to support others and encourage them as they went through their process. But the truth is, I didn't even believe it, even when they told me. I went back to the unit. They're like, don't you get it? I'm like, no. They're like, you're going to board, you're going home. And I just didn't believe it.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Appreciate you. Thank you for joining us too. And thank you for the inspiration. And what I said, if you weren't on for the last panel, we will be sending this inside for others to be able to see this so that they can understand, regardless of what your sentence is, if you like, believe in hope and know that there are people out here fighting for you. Know that there's an opportunity for you to come home, and know that we will not rest until everyone has an opportunity to be able to come home and demonstrate redemption is possible, second chances are possible. Mike, for you, what was it? Again, LWOP was considered the other death sentence. What was it that helped you maintain hope during this sentence?
Well, ironically, I had a close relationship with my parents, and my mom was always on me about everything. They made me call once a week. They would call if I missed a week. We'd be on lockdown, and they would call. And so they were always, the cops were always telling me, hey, get your mom off us, man. Right? So I did my time on some bad yards, and then I ended up luckily on the Lancaster yard. And I started feeling a change. I always was very lucky in prison. I was, when things happened, I was always out the way for one reason or another. And whether it's, God's hand, I don't know. But I never really totally gave up hope, but I never totally believed I was going to get out. I just did what I did to not get in trouble. Ironically, a write-up actually started me on my path to getting out. I got a write-up, I took responsibility for it. And then my faith, I started going back to church and actually confessed my crime. I never confessed to anybody the whole time I was in prison for 30 years. And it just, a change came over me. And I didn't even know about all these great organizations trying to do this, to try to get people out, change the sentence. And the rumor was going around the yard that everybody had a chance to get a commutation. And there was like 400 of us on that yard. And I put in, my brother browbeat me to death he kept on me, put it in. He had nothing to lose. And I wasn't sure I deserved it. And I still, like Kelly said, that's the hardest question to answer, whether you deserve it or not. But I didn't want anybody else to go through this. It's a horrible thing being away from your loved ones. My folks died in 2010, long before I got out. And sorry.
It's all good. Keep going, brother.
But I wanted to change. I wanted to be better. And so I put in a commutation. I did a long interview with a former warden, and Jerry Brown commuted my sentence. He thought I deserved a second chance. And then I got found suitable. And like Kelly said, it's hard work. It is, they don't just, I know a lot of guys that got commuted that are still in there. They just thought it was an automatic thing. It's not automatic. You have to really change yourself. And I wanted to be of service more than I wanted to be of harm. And here I am.
Mike, you definitely deserve it. Sorry for your loss, brother, but I honestly believe that your parents are smiling down upon you right now, saying, son, job well done. So continue to do what you're doing, brother. Like you're an asset to us here at the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. And I personally appreciate you. When we do events together, the hardest working person is Mike.
Thanks.
Alan, for you, what was it that kept you hopeful when you were sentenced to, as they call it, like the other death sentence?
Like Mike, it was my family. I had a grandfather, and I love my grandfather. I admired him, and I would call him like every couple of days, and he would tell me like he's waiting on me to come home. He says he's had these dreams about me walking down his driveway. He said he was gonna wring my neck when he saw me, but you know, like everybody else, my hope, it waxed and it waned, and it was times when I was messing up because I just felt that I was never gonna get out of prison, and you know, the environments that I was in New Folsom and Pelican Bay and all these different places. And I was seeing all these men who also had life without the possibility of parole. But I'm a type of person who really paid attention to a lot of detail. And I'd listen to the stories that they told about losing their family members and having all these different things happen to them. And that stuff used to motivate me, because the one thing that I didn't want to do was lose my family while I was incarcerated. And that feeling of hopelessness and that fear was what was motivating me a lot of times to do good. And so I took trades. I did these different things because I wanted to be able to show them to my mother and my grandfather and let them know that I wasn't, you know, what the court said that I was. I wasn't that person. I was the person who they knew me as. And so I had like these periods where I would do great. And what came from that was, like I said, that fear and that bit of hope. But when I came to Lancaster, to progressive programming facility, and I was among all those men who had life without the possibility of parole, and I saw them doing all these amazing things. And right after I got there, then I started hearing about SB 9 and all these things for the juveniles, and that hope was like, well, if they're going to give it to the juveniles, I was just a year away from being a juvenile. Maybe I want to start preparing for the board, start doing these things. But it was in that process that I began to like find value in the work that I was doing there on the facility, facilitating classes, establishing MOUs with other organizations, all these great things. And so it paid off. In 2017, I had an interview. But then again, that doubt came back because I waited 2 years before I was actually commuted. And so I said, well, life without must be really real if they came and talked to me and they're not gonna let me go. So, but at the end of the day, you know, hope is a dangerous thing, but it's also a motivator too, you know, it really is. Yes, sir.
Hey, again, welcome home, brother. Thank you. To our audience, a couple of things. I have to leave early, and our moderator, Heidi, has agreed to finish out the show as our moderator. I want to thank you, Heidi. I also want to thank all of our panelists. You are amazing human beings. You are deserving of your freedom. Thank you for coming back and giving back to the communities and help our communities heal. Last thing I want to say is on Thanksgiving Eve, ARC will be in front of Los Angeles City Hall and in front of the Capitol, holding a candlelight visual for all of our brothers, sisters, and people inside that have passed away from COVID, and for those that remain inside. We don't want people to forget about this. They have not seen their families since March. I know how I felt when I could not see my family for months and how difficult it is. And we just want to raise awareness and let them know that we continue to hold them up and that we haven't forgotten about them. We're going to continue to fight. If you want to participate, just show up. We will have masks, we will have hand sanitizer, we will have candles, and we will be enforcing strict COVID safety precautions, meaning you have to wear a mask, you must social distance, and we'll pass out candles at City Hall, both in Sacramento at the state capitol and at City Hall down here in Los Angeles. Thank you all. Thank you, Heidi, for taking over.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks, Sam. I wanted to circle back and touch on the power of hope, because I think, you know, for me from the outside, that's been one of the things that has been the most that I've learned and has just touched me the most. Working with clients over the years, so many people who had no hope, and then watching them develop hope, and how that can motivate change. And one of my other experiences from the outside is going back in and people inside not really realizing that we're paying attention out here and we're fighting for them, and there's a lot of groups and support for them. So because this is going to be broadcast inside the prisons, I'd like to have each of the panelists just give a few sentences. What would you like people inside to know? Maybe people who don't have the hope or the motivation that you had eventually to change, about anything that you've seen since you've been out, or your path. That I'd just like to go around and do that, and then we'll have our sort of our closing thoughts, because we have to be mindful of the time. Do you want to start us off, Kelly? Do you have a message for people inside?
Sure. I think the biggest message is that there are people out here, because we know a small number of people are doing things, but we don't know exactly what's happening. And it is absolutely extremely important that people are aware that there are people fighting every single day. There's family members getting involved in ways that some never did before. So it's really, really important. And I hope that everyone, as they are looking at what their next steps are going to be once institutions open up, that they're looking at what they can do to prepare today. You know, in the beginning of my time, I used to tell people, do a portfolio, and everybody be like, there is no reason, there's no hope, it's not going to happen. And I had that portfolio classes on purpose so that I would encourage people to get involved. And when they took them for their commutation interviews, every single person that came back after their interview said, thank you. This gave them one more step, a step up in the interview process, because it showed that they were dedicated to continue to fight for their freedom, even when they didn't have hope. And
Thanks,
so it's
Kelly.
about continuing that.
Thanks, Kelly. I know I've stood up in workshops and explained new laws to people that didn't have any chance of going to a parole board, and letting them know now you have a chance to go. And I sometimes got the comment, why weren't you here 10 years ago to tell me that? And I'm like, because I didn't know this was going to happen 10 years ago, but today's today, and you can start, and it's never too late. Mike, do you have anything you want to say to people inside about what's happening out here on their behalf, or what they can be doing in there while we're working on changing things out here?
You really have to work on yourself. You have to be about what you say you are. You have to figure out who you were, and you have really, insight is a big thing. Who you were and why you did what you did. And the parole board, seriously, they don't consider anything. They consider a lot of things, but that's like the most important. That you understand why you did what you did, and you've changed, and you've taken responsibility. It's you can work at it. I'm proof. You can work yourself out.
Thanks so much, Mike. Alan?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking about all my friends that are still inside. I guess my real message is that I'm always going to be a part of you. I've had LWOP for so long that it's just a part of who I am. And I'm thinking about like all my friends that I've met over the years who are still serving their sentence, the guys that call me every day. And I just want you guys to know that I love you, and I haven't forgot about you, and I'm not going to forget about you. And every opportunity that I get to talk about LWOP and the impact that it had on me, I'm speaking for you as well. But my biggest message would be, do the work and live your life like you're going to the board next year. And don't give anyone a reason to say that you don't deserve to be out of prison, that you don't deserve a second chance, that you're not able to change who you were. That's my message.
Thank you so much. All right, we are 5 minutes to the end, so I'm going to go around. Maybe we'll go back around in reverse order to ask you for any final thoughts on the sentence of LWOP, the Zoom today, the work that advocates are doing, maybe a message, maybe something about gratefulness. We got Thanksgiving around the corner, which people won't know when this is playing in the prisons, but we are coming up on a COVID Thanksgiving. So whatever you'd like to say in closing, any final thoughts? Alan, you want to start us off? I know I can put you on the spot because
yeah. So every every year on the progressive program facility, the guys collect all this food and they order all these packages for Thanksgiving, and they feed the whole building, primarily where the Pause for Life Canine Rescue is. And just want to tell them, just keep up the tradition, man, and don't lose faith. I know like it's really it's bad right now with COVID and you not being able to see your families and everything, but just know that everyone loves you. And then for the families that are listening in and they have an opportunity to hear this, like, you're sentenced to LWOP too, but I'm saying don't lose faith. Like, things will change, things will get better. It's going to happen. And happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Kelly. Some final words for us, Kelly, please.
So for me, I think it's really important that everything Alan has said was absolutely on point. You know, families are serving the sentence with us, being prepared every single minute. I constantly get criticism because I include myself in a LWOP status. I can't change that. I actually am proud not to change that anymore. At first, I tried. Yes, I am free, but all of my loved ones are still stuck in there. And, you know, even mail today, I get mail on a daily basis from inside, but every single time it's thank you for speaking up for us because our voices are silenced. And I refuse to allow that to continue in any form or fashion that I can. I try to educate people and motivate people to want to support and acknowledge that it isn't easy for anyone sitting in the system, COVID or not, but it's even worse right now. And if people are willing to speak up and people are willing to just write a letter inside, maybe you've visited, maybe they take calls, maybe you've done all these things, but when was the last time you wrote in there to let them know, hey, at this moment, I'm thinking about you, because it is extremely important. And I hope that people will take time this week as a way of a blessing to bless somebody inside and let them know you're thinking of them.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much. Mike, do you have 1 minute of final thought for us, please?
Yeah, I never really believed in hope, but there's hope now. And like you said, your families are going through this too. And families, stay on your people. Don't let their despair defeat them. It's because it does affect you too, but you can also help them, give them a kick in the ass. Because you can do the work.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. And I just want to wrap up by saying thank you to ARC for this platform to talk about this really important topic, for their partnership in advocating for everyone and for supporting our LWOP efforts, for the amazing Elizabeth Calvin and her team at Human Rights Watch, who are really making such important strides into eliminating this sentence and giving a voice to the people who have the greatest capacity to change this sentence for everyone. For me, it's such a privilege. It has been for such a long time to do this work and to know the people I know and to meet the people I meet in this journey. It's always inspiring. Thanks to everyone, and onward.